At some point on your path of awakening, maybe following a significant spiritual insight or a personal collapse, you sensed a fundamental change. You perceived the facade, the recurring behaviors, the static, and then quiet. Initially, it felt potent, even liberating, but gradually that feeling of purpose simply faded away. Not suddenly, not with any drama, but subtly, as if your soul had muted the sound of existence and then neglected to turn it back on. You ceased the pursuit. You ceased to be invested, not in a destructive manner, but in a quiet, existential sigh sort of way. The question began to echo more insistently. Why do I feel so hollow now that I have finally perceived the truth? There is a peculiar paradox at play here. We anticipate that a spiritual awakening will fuel our enthusiasm, but for a great many, particularly the profoundly introspective individuals, the empaths, the seekers, it accomplishes the reverse. It leaves us feeling hollow. I recall a conversation with a friend, exceptionally intelligent, spiritually in tune, and deeply engaged with all the seminal books. Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, Krishnamurti. Then, she experienced a profound awakening after a dark night of the soul. She understood, she said. She perceived the fallacy of her constructed identity, the ego, the chase for external validation. And yet, 2 months later, she found herself staring at her ceiling, hardly capable of getting out of bed. She confessed to me, I once wept over not accomplishing enough. Now it doesn't matter to me if I accomplish anything at all. I believed awakening would illuminate me, not leave me in this state. Carl Jung, the founder of analytical psychology, alluded to this post-awakening haze many years ago. He didn't use fashionable spiritual language, but he grasped what occurs when the unconscious is brought into consciousness. Jung stated, "Enlightenment doesn't come by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This sounds lovely until you grasp its implications. Awakening is not the conclusion. It's the start of a psychic demise, the death of the person you believed you were. The frameworks that provided your life with meaning, goals, careers, relationships, even your perception of time, all fall apart. But here is the critical detail Jung would emphasize. Your ego has not vanished. It's disoriented. It has lost its guide, and without a new one, motivation evaporates. So it is not that you are depressed or have lost your drive. You are simply in an intermediate state. You have awakened from one thing, but you have yet to awaken into another. But this is where the situation becomes both compelling and widely misunderstood. What you are experiencing at this moment is not a failure. It is not depression or anxiety in a clinical context. It is something timeless and sacred. Jung, in fact, cautioned that our contemporary society avoids this particular phase at any cost. This hallowed pause, this emptiness, this in-between. He saw it as vital for genuine individuation, the journey of realizing your authentic self. But nobody informs you about this stage, do they? And that is precisely what we will explore next. What is genuinely transpiring in your psyche after awakening, and why this decline in motivation could be the most significant spiritual advancement you have ever had, provided you comprehend it correctly. Before we proceed, if you are an individual who enjoys broadening your perspective and investigating the deeper strata of existence, be sure to subscribe to Fractal Wisdom. This channel was created to render the invisible visible and to aid those navigating the strange and untamed journey of awakening. So, if you have been drifting in that post-awakening haze, asking yourself where your vitality has gone, understand that you are not losing your mind. You are undergoing a psychological transformation that most people cannot articulate. A shift so profound, it doesn't merely alter your thoughts. It rewrites your fundamental programming. All the ambitions you once pursued, the checklists, the 5-year strategies, the hustle culture soundtracks, they fail to stir you any longer. Not because you are failing, but because the very framework of your motivation is disintegrating. And Carl Jung foresaw this long before it was a popular subject on social media. Let's dissect this. For the majority of your life, your drive originated from your ego identity, the me you presumed yourself to be. You had a desire to validate yourself, to be noticed, to be accomplished, to be cherished. This is not inherently negative. It is simply the mechanism of human development. Jung labeled this the persona, the mask we adopt to operate within society. However, the process of awakening removes that mask. All at once, you are no longer attempting to be popular. You are no longer attempting to win the contest, because you now see the contest itself. And that is where things become strange. Without the mask, your former goals no longer seem appropriate. They were designed for a version of yourself that is no more. So now you resemble a character in a drama who has walked off the stage and cannot recall their lines. This is why you feel a lack of motivation. It's not that your drive disappeared. You simply evolved beyond the fuel source that once sustained it. Carl Jung held that we are not meant to be slaves to the ego. We are meant to integrate it, to harmonize it with something greater. He gave this process a name: individuation, the path of evolving from a divided identity into a complete, unified self. Not the little self that craves accolades, but the self, that transcendent, soul-deep core within you that is connected to all things. And this self has no interest in status or validation or even certainty. Its purpose is to manifest truth. Thus, once the awakening occurs, your psyche initiates a recalibration. It starts to reject anything artificial, contrived, or based on the ego. This encompasses careers, connections, aspirations, and even that meticulously assembled vision board from 2021. This is why individuals often characterize awakening as simultaneously liberating and disorienting. But Jung cautioned, if we stop here, we get stuck. Some individuals awaken and succumb to the pitfall of spiritual bypassing, persuading themselves that nothing is of consequence, that it is all merely an illusion. Consequently, they detach, drift, and become numb. They mistake non-attachment for complete withdrawal. But the self desires something else entirely. It desires to experience life through you. It wants to incarnate heaven within this human form. It does not reject the world. It redefines your function within it. To embrace that, you must pass through an unusual intermediate stage that Jung described flawlessly, and which few people identify while they are experiencing it. There is a period following awakening that is seldom discussed. It is not captivating, and it does not garner thousands of social media likes. It does not resemble meditating in Bali or composing deep Instagram captions. It resembles this: sitting in quietude, incapable of articulating your state, as the world continues its frantic pace. Carl Jung would contend that you are not lost. You are in a transitional space. You have disidentified from the ego, but have not yet discovered a new method of living from the self. This space is not a shortcoming. It is a rite of passage. Yet in our intensely productive culture, stillness is often misread as indolence, and a pause is mistaken for paralysis. As a result, you pass judgment on yourself, and that judgment obstructs the very vitality your soul is attempting to summon back. Jung had a specific term for this psychological interval. He named it enantiodromia, the principle by which things transform into their opposites. Upon awakening, your internal pendulum shifts from ego-fueled ambition to a soul-level quietude. You transition from "I must accomplish everything" to "Why accomplish anything?" And this swing is sacred. It is the mechanism by which equilibrium is reestablished. In mythology and ancient wisdom, this is the hermit stage, the demise that precedes regeneration. It is the point where the caterpillar liquefies inside its chrysalis, no longer a caterpillar, but not yet a butterfly, just a formless substance. And yes, that substance does not achieve tasks. It does not hustle. It dissolves. This is the point where the ego enters a state of panic. It craves activity, identity, and a clear path. But the self is murmuring, "Surrender. I am constructing something more profound." This is where much of modern spirituality tends to bypass the difficult parts. It advises, "Just follow your joy," or "high vibes only." And while intention and energy are important, Carl Jung would inform you that if you attempt to circumvent the darkness, you also circumvent the treasure. Jung was convinced that shadow integration, confronting the suppressed, discomforting aspects of yourself, is crucial for achieving wholeness. It is not elective, not for extra points. It is the central coursework for a human soul. This sacred void you are sensing is the space where the unconscious can finally surface. You are not failing. You are processing. And your psyche is remarkably astute. It will deliberately halt your motivation, your ambition, and even your ability to find clarity, so that you are compelled to feel, observe, and reintegrate what you have repressed. That is the authentic work. And here is the beautiful turn. When you cease to fight against the void, a strange thing begins to occur. Motivation starts to re-emerge, but it has a different quality this time. It is not fraught with anxiety. It is not for show. It is not about the hustle. It is something more ancient and more serene, a form of soul-guided motion that feels more like recollection than pursuit. Jung referred to this as the emergence of the self, not as an idea, but as a living internal compass. So you have traversed the void. You have experienced the quiet, the stillness, the profound pause. And now, something new is beginning to awaken within you. Not a bolt of lightning, and not a display of fireworks, but more of a gentle inner magnetism, not to return to your former life, but to construct a new one. This is the point where the self starts to communicate, not with language, but with gentle prompts, with resonance, with what Carl Jung termed the symbolic life. He believed that after the ego has yielded and the unconscious has been integrated, we gain the ability to live from a place more profound than personality. That is when life ceases to be a matter of survival and transforms into a quest for meaning. And here is a surprising reality. It is often exquisitely mundane. When the self is your guide, you cease to hustle and instead begin to respond. You are not driven by a fear of missing out. You are steered by what feels resonant. You no longer pursue clarity. You recognize it upon its arrival. Living from the self does not imply you will perpetually feel motivated in the conventional way. You may still experience waves of exhaustion, uncertainty, and even sorrow. That is part of being human. But what you will no longer endure is that persistent feeling of self-betrayal, the sensation of forcing yourself through a life that is a poor fit. Instead, you may begin to find yourself drawn to creative acts, even when there is no audience. You decline opportunities that do not resonate, even if they appear advantageous on the surface. You start to follow your sense of wonder, not your to-do list. You prioritize tranquility over performance. This is the new source of energy. The new fuel isn't adrenaline, It's alignment. Jung described this as living symbolically, not in a world of make-believe, but with soul, where you start to rely on your inner visions, dreams, synchronicities, and intuitive feelings for direction. So, what does this appear as in practice? At times, it is as straightforward as posing different questions. Instead of, "What am I supposed to do?" ask, "What is softly beckoning to me?" Instead of, "What is the strategy?" ask, "Where is life gently guiding me?" Instead of, "How can I validate myself?" ask, "What feels authentic?" You start to collaborate with life rather than attempting to control it. And this does not mean abandoning ambition. It means re-envisioning it. Ambition transforms into a devotion to authenticity, to presence, and to development. And the paradox is that this type of energy accomplishes things far more efficiently than the ego ever could. But now, it is sustainable. It is now powered by the soul. This is the motivation of the self, not to impress, but to express. And it frequently guides you to create, serve, heal, teach, and build, not out of a sense of obligation, but because your entire being affirms it. So, if you have been feeling as though your spark has been extinguished after awakening, it is that the old fire has died out to make way for a more profound flame, one that does not waver when external forces blow. Carl Jung did not guarantee a simple journey, and if you are here listening to this, you are already on that journey. It is not about reclaiming your old motivation. It's about unearthing a new motivation, one founded on wholeness instead of performance. This is not the conclusion of your awakening. It is the commencement of your becoming. If this resonated with you, if it gave a name to something you have been quietly navigating, please leave a comment below. I would be very interested to hear how this journey has been for you. And if you would like more content of this nature, where we delve into psychology, soul, and self-awareness in ways that are genuinely applicable to real life, please be sure to subscribe to Fractal Wisdom. Because awakening is not the final chapter. It is where the real story starts.